So we resume this week on page 80 of the book. And this actually is a continuation from last week, which was we were discussing the second principle, which is Yichud Hashem, the unity, the oneness of God. But now, and I'm really pleased that he's done this, he's actually sort of bringing it into our davening and something that we say every single day of our lives, which is Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. So therefore, it's the same topic, but he's actually sort of not explaining the words of one of the Rambam's principles, but rather explaining how we express that when we daven, when we say the Shema. So let's take a look. Shema, our eternal rallying cry. No one sentence has taken on as much meaning to the Jewish people as that of Shema Yisrael. At the youngest age, as a toddler, haltingly expresses his first tefillahs, his first prayers. The words of Shema play a starring role. Each night as a child is tucked into bed, he murmurs the words of Shema. I'm smiling because I just sang it to our 11-month-old Akiva, right? And it's funny, you do that, like it's like the first thing they hear. They come to associate it with, I suppose, with night and safety at least. As he grows older, the twice daily recitation of Shema becomes a central pillar of his day. During his last moments on this world, the words of Shema close a life of many years, turning the page to the next world. The Jew calls out Shema Yisrael at the climactic fading moments of Yom Kippur and before the Torah is read on Shabbos. Whether he was about to be burned at the stake during the Inquisition or led to the gas chambers, the cry of Shema Yisrael always accompanied him. So what we're going to learn about tonight, is we're going to see why Shema Yisrael is so central, because it's the motto, if you like, of the Jewish people. It's the anthem of what it means to be a Jew, and our entire life is sandwiched between the Shema Yisrael that we say when we're a baby or that we hear in the crib, all the way until the final words of Shema Yisrael in our lives. We're at the bottom of page 80. Please do follow along. The Rambam, Maimonides, says, the words of Shema attest to the concept of Yichud Hashem, which means the unity and the oneness of God and everything that is in the world. When we declare Shema Yisrael, we are essentially affirming our belief in this oneness of God. It is this conviction we carry with us at all times. What is the meaning of Shema Yisrael? Why does it occupy such a prominent place in Judaism? Continues on page 81. Much of the discussion surrounding the concept of Yichud Hashem, which means God's unity, focuses on the intricacies of Hashem's oneness. This discussion commonly revolves around scholarly issue, such as the true definition of one and analysis of where others went wrong in this regard, the options as to whether Shittuf, a partnership to a deity such as in the Trinity of the Catholics, constitutes Avodah Zarah, idol worship, and lahavdil, to separate this, the question of whether we can truly grasp aspects of his nature. Meaning there are lots of different scholarly and philosophical things we could discuss when speaking about the oneness of God. These themes relate primarily to the understanding of Hashem. We human beings don't factor much into this discussion, right? We could have a scholarly theological discussion, which would be a fascinating discussion, about whether the non-Jewish belief, as we said, the Christian belief of a Trinity, whether that is considered to be idol worship, why it is that we know that that is wrong, the nature of grasping different aspects. Is God all oneness, or is there different aspects of God's nature? But as long as we do that, we're focusing not on ourselves and not on what's going on down here, but on what's happening up there. Now, there is a certain, we're inquisitive about that, and there's a certain amount, that we can understand about that. It's actually interesting, by the way, a lot of Kabbalah, the mysticism of Torah, that focuses on trying to understand what we can of Hashem himself, as it were, what God has revealed to us. But that's not the focus of what we're going to discuss tonight. As he continues, Yichud Hashem features, this oneness, unity of God features another major angle, a perspective whose lens is focused firmly on us and our way of life. How so? Picture for a moment two scenes side by side. In each one, someone's beginning his morning by catching up on the news. Both individuals hear the same stories. Civil war is about to erupt in Venezuela. A virus is triggering a lockdown in some provinces in China. Elections are being held for governor in 3 different states, and a hurricane is approaching the Gulf of Mexico. I have to say, with the news nowadays, that's like a normal day, The news used to be really boring when I was growing up. Nothing much happened. but it's become like, this like thrilling read, unfortunately not for the right reasons usually. So there's two people and they're sitting down, they're listening to this news. The first individual is a plumber who's busy fixing pipes and installing fixtures around town most of the day. He hears the stories with a yawn. World news doesn't affect him that much. He does have some strong opinions about viruses and lockdowns. You can tell when this book was written, right? And perhaps a few thoughts about hurricanes and global warming. But these are just conversation topics to hash out with his friends. None of this has any real bearing on his life, and he sees no connection between one story and the next. Okay, now a lot of Jewish people would argue with that because, of course, it's very important for us to be in the know because we know how to run the world better than, so and so and the Israeli Prime Minister. We can do a better job, and we will tell everyone at the Shabbos table whilst banging our fist on the table, right? And then carrying on with our meal. But you understand, it doesn't affect him personally that much. The second fellow is the CEO of a large multinational corporation. He needs supply chains. He needs oil delivered and needs state regulations that foster a workable environment. Every story he hears on the news ends for him with one question. How does this affect my business? Lockdown in China. How will this impact my ability to restock? War in Venezuela. Will that drive up oil prices? Someone won an election. What does that mean for my subsidiaries in that state? To him, the main question is not which candidate is more qualified, more talented, or more eloquent. Top of page 82. It's about who is good for the business. He filters every news item, every discussion point through one constant prism. What does this information mean for my business? By the way, we all do this to an extent. We do this to an extent where you speak to someone and kind of, you can tell that what sort of catches their mind is whatever field they are in particularly. For me, certainly, and I speak to other rabbinic colleagues as well, and sometimes you're like filtering it through what's going to be in the drosha. What would be useful material for the next time that I speak, and that we all do this naturally to some extent, but obviously the CEO of the company, he's worried how this is going to affect his business. And if he's got, the bigger the business is, the more it's going to affect it. And by the way, everyone in their field, the person in property, I guarantee you they're looking at the mortgage rates because they know that's going to make a very big difference to their bottom line of the day. And the person that's in teaching, they want to know about the Ofsted news. And the person that's an accountant, they want to know what the financial, the budget is going to mean for them and for their clients, right? It's clear, it's obvious. So he continues, if we recognize that every single thing we see and experience is from Hashem alone, and no other force exists that can cause anything to happen, then we must constantly view every occurrence, personal, communal, or global, through the prism of his directing these events. Our follow-up question then will always be the same. What does he want now? What can I do to fulfill Hashem's plan? My mind constantly assesses each vicissitude. Ian, you're going to have to help me. Ian?
Vicissitude.
Thank you very much. Vicissitude of life through the viewpoint of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's running of the world. Whether I'm pondering the election, the weather, or my day at work, my opinions and decisions are molded based on what's good for Hashem's corporation. And this is an interesting thing because whatever individual role that we play and whatever occupation we have, at the end of the day, we are all part, as it were, of God's corporation, as Hashem's ambassadors in the world as Jewish people. And therefore, I think we all do this to an extent, when it comes to Israel, for example. We'll look at world events and we'll sort of think to ourselves, right, oh, there's a new president of America. Good for Israel, bad for Israel, right? That's the way that we'll kind of view the prism through which we're going to look at it, not exclusively, but that's certainly going to come into our minds when viewing things like that. So we have to start trying to view things, and that should be the prism that we work towards viewing things and asking ourselves the question, is this good for Hashem's, as it were, corporation, for Hashem's company in the world? Is this going to bring humanity closer to God? Is it going to take them further away from God? Right? For example, this assisted dying bill, there were lots of different perspectives and ways that people were looking at it. But for us as Jewish people, what's primary is looking at it as the way, how does the Torah, how does Hashem view life, view the importance of human life? How does Hashem view our role in this world as human beings? And are these decisions that we are able, qualified, and supposed to be taking? Well, maybe these are things that Hashem is supposed to be deciding. And it's almost as a Jewish person, obviously there are other factors that come into it. There's coercion, there's all sorts of things that come into it. But as a Jewish person, it's impossible to sort of think about it, and it should be impossible to think about the issue without that perspective, because that is our perspective on life. It's not just like, that's God's perspective, but what is my perspective? The more that we become attuned to our Judaism and the more that we live with that, then the more that that becomes our perspective and the prism through which we see things, as it were, through God's corporation. He continues, the race matters more than the race car. The recognition of Hashem as the sole force in the universe impacts more than just our views and opinions. It's something that should serve as the motivational energy behind our every action. As devoted Jews, we constantly give of our time, money, and resources for the sake of fulfilling Hashem's will in both our daily and seasonal obligations. We spend time every day learning Torah and davening, donating money towards communal causes, supporting institutions of Torah and Chesed, and we pay premium prices for kosher food, yeshiva tuition, right, school fees, a lulav and an esrog, and so many other items. Often we forfeit something big or small to actualize our values and live a truly fulfilling life. It's funny, by the way, we don't even notice this sometimes, but if you would just add up, I should be careful, I don't want to put anyone off, but if you would add up all the extra expenses that the Jewish family have, right, starting from the kosher food, the Shabbat expenses, the Yom Tov expenses, the school fees, all of the various tzedakah that we're giving, it's expensive to be Jewish, right? It is expensive to be Jewish. Okay, and sometimes we don't, as it were, pat ourselves on the back and realize that all of those little things that we're doing, which are extra because I am Jewish and I have these mitzvahs to fulfill, all of those really is a big zechus. It's a big merit for us. If you would go through, every year, the end of the year, and you'd say, how much did I spend this year on those, fulfilling my obligations as a Jewish person? And it would add up to, I don't know how many thousands, and you try not to think about it too much, but it would add up to how many thousands of pounds. You have to realize that all goes on the scale of mitzvahs, right? That's all money that we've spent on doing the right thing, on doing mitzvahs. That's a wonderful thing. So let's continue. The ultimate sacrifice, he says, page 83, of course, is that of life itself. Jews throughout the ages have willingly gone to their death rather than renounce their allegiance to Hashem. In those final moments, Shema was invariably on their lips. For instance, the Gemara teaches that as Rabbi Akiva was being tortured to death in a very painful manner, he recited Shema, moving on to the next word as he recited the word Echad, that final word of the line of Shema. Chazal, our sages, actually describe this act of sacrificing one's life with the intriguing words, Mosrim nafsham lemisa al yichud Hashem. They give their lives for the yichud Hashem, the unity of God. This choice of terminology is rather curious. People sacrifice their life for belief in God. They sacrifice their lives for keeping His Torah. They sacrifice their lives al kiddush Hashem to sanctify His name. What does it mean to sanctify one's life for the unity of God's name? What does that mean? Yichud Hashem, he answers, the unity of God is not what they sacrificed their lives for, but rather how they were able to sacrifice their entire being for their beliefs. They understood that Hashem is one, meaning that there is nothing in the world but Him. Since He is all I have, I'll give up anything, even life itself, when necessary, for His sake. To illustrate this idea, imagine you're watching the last lap of a car race. Several cars hurtle at high speed towards the checkered flag. One driver's in the lead, but the race is tight. To maintain his lead down the final stretch, the driver can floor the pedal, pushing his car beyond its limits to cross the finish line in a burst of record speed. Doing so, however, will destroy the car's motor, necessitating expensive repairs. The tires and numerous other parts will likely be damaged as well. Should he go all out at the cost of demolishing his vehicle? To the driver, the answer is obvious. He's in it to win. Will his car suffer damage? The whole point of having a car is to win the race. The car is just a detail, a means of carrying him to victory. He's not destroying the car. He's using it for its ultimate purpose. Continues, it's similarly with us. The core of every individual is not our money, our possessions, or our social standing. It's not even our bodies. It's our neshama, our soul. Continues on page 84, and our neshama, our soul alone. After all, our bodies are a part of us for a finite number of years, while our neshama, our soul, defines us forever. My body is no more than a glorified race car, a tool given to me to carry me to the finish line of Olam Hazeh, of this world. Without a body, I couldn't accomplish anything in this world. But once the race is over and I cross the finish line into the world to come, I hop out of the car and continue being whoever I am. If I'm hyper-focused on the race, then my body, my resources, and all my abilities take on value only as far as they propel me towards the finish line. Essentially, giving up one's life for Kiddush Hashem to sanctify God's name isn't giving up anything. It's a brilliant rush across the finish line. I'm not destroying my body. I'm using it to win the race. It continues, Yichud Hashem means nothing matters but Him and His will. If I have this clarity of focus, I can do anything for Him. I can give up money. I can give up ambitions. I can even give up my life if called upon. My goal is to do whatever I can to best serve Him. This is our call of Shema Yisrael. Okay, so now we're going to go through how this fits into Shema Yisrael and what this means. And again, what we've said is that the unity of God, the oneness and the unity means living a life where we can see that unity and that oneness, where we can view the entire world through that prism of the fact that this is Hashem's world that we're living in, and we, as it were, are a part of His corporation. We're a part of God's company in this world. So now let's listen carefully to those words of Shema Yisrael, because we've said them so many times that it's so easy to say them without even thinking. And yes, we know them off by heart as well, and that sometimes doesn't help. Shema Yisrael, hear what we're about to say, listen well, and internalize it. Hashem Elokeinu. Hashem is the absolute controller of every single thing that transpires in our world. He runs the world in a unique manner for us, the Jewish people, because we alone have a special bond with Him. Right? That's our God. Hashem is our God, the controller and our God. And then we end off Hashem Echad, looking beyond the face value of everything we experience in life. We realize there's only one force behind it all. He is the one. He is the only one. By the way, that's the reason why some people say that we cover our eyes. When we say the Shema, we cover our eyes because when we look around us in the world, then we see so many other things that are taking place. And we see so much that seems to say that God isn't around, God isn't in charge. So when we take a moment out of our lives, we cover our eyes and we say to ourselves, I'm not looking around at the world at the moment. I'm not looking at everything I can see, but rather I'm just internalizing and saying something for myself. I'm just taking a step back, a step out, and realizing that Hashem is actually the one and absolute controller, and everything that happens, there's only really one force behind all of it. He continues, as the world hustles and bustles, inundating us with a cacophony of news and events, we need to look past the smokescreen of randomness and realize everything we experience is due to His pulling the strings. Whatever happens or exists in our world is a reflection of Him alone. There is nothing else. What comes after Shema? What do we say straight after this powerful declaration? V'ahavta es Hashem. Love God, connect to Him, bond with Him through learning, doing mitzvahs, emulating His kindness and goodness, follow His guidance in every area of life. If He is all that matters, I will channel all my abilities and resources from morning to night, from cradle to grave, do everything I can to fulfill what He asks of me. Ultimately, He's all that exists in my life. Everything else fades into the backstage. So let's try this week. When we say the Shema, we say those words and we cover our eyes and we say Shema Yisrael, to just think to ourselves, maybe just the one thought that Hashem is the absolute controller of everything. And then the next stage is, how am I going to connect to Him? Because if He's truly in charge, if He's truly in charge of everything that's going on in the world and in my life, then surely I should be channeling my abilities to try and connect to Him. Because there's that love, that connection that exists between us, and it's our job to work on that. It's our job to make that stronger. That completes for this week.
Very well. Thank you.